Here's something that should be mathematically impossible. Fewer homes are selling right now than at any point in 30 years. And yet, prices are sitting near all-time highs. Fewer people buying, higher prices. In any normal market, those two things cancel each other out. That's how supply and demand works. You learned it in 8th grade, so did I, and yet here we are. The market is frozen. The prices are absurd. The average first-time buyer is now 40 years old. If you've tried to buy a home recently, you already know something is deeply structurally wrong. You just can't quite put your finger on what. Today, we're going to fix that. Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers are the only thing that tell the truth. The median home price right now is about $418,000. In 2019, just 6 years ago, it was $272,000. That's a 46% jump. Not in Manhattan, not in San Francisco, nationwide, the dead middle of the entire country. Mortgage rates are sitting around 6.5%, which sounds manageable until you remember that in January 2021, you could get a 30-year fixed mortgage for 2.65%. That is a completely different financial planet. Let me show you what that gap means in actual dollars. Same house, $400,000 purchase price, 20% down, $320,000 mortgage. At 2.65%, your monthly payment is $1,293. At today's 6.5%, that same loan costs $2,023 a month. That's $730 more per month. Every month, for 30 years, for the same house, same carpet, same school district, same yard the size of a generous parking space. And the house itself costs $146,000 more than it did 6 years ago. So you're paying more for the loan and more for the house. Both. At the same time. This is not bad luck. This is not a market correction waiting to happen. This is the output of a very specific sequence of decisions and shocks that piled on top of each other over 5 years. And once you understand the sequence, the current situation stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like an almost inevitable outcome. Let me walk you through the dominoes, because this didn't happen overnight. It happened in stages, and each stage made the next stage worse. Domino 1, 2020. The pandemic hits. The Federal Reserve, in an act of emergency financial panic, slashes rates to basically zero. They start buying $120 billion in bonds and mortgage-backed securities every single month. They are injecting money into the financial system with the commitment of someone who has started a bonfire and is now slightly worried they may have used too much lighter fluid. By January 2021, the 30-year fixed mortgage hit 2.65%, the lowest rate Freddie Mac had recorded since 1971. People who'd been sitting on the fence about buying suddenly realized they could afford dramatically more house for the same monthly payment. So they bought, and bought, and bought some more. But that was only half the fuel. Domino 2. COVID rewired what Americans needed from their homes. Suddenly, your apartment was your office, your gym, your school, your restaurant, and your primary source of human contact. A 700-square-foot place in the city that used to feel fine suddenly felt like a sensory deprivation tank with a Wi-Fi password. Remote work exploded. From under 6% to over 18% almost overnight. Millions of people started asking a reasonable question. If I can work from anywhere, why am I paying $2,800 a month to live somewhere I don't actually like? So they left. Manhattan shed 200,000 households. San Francisco, Chicago, and Los Angeles each lost tens of thousands. And all of them descended on Austin, Phoenix, Boise, Nashville, Tampa. Places with already tight inventory that suddenly had a stampede of buyers with pre-approvals, pandemic savings, and a desperate need for a home office that wasn't also a closet. National home prices jumped 37% between March 2020 and March 2022. Not over a decade, 2 years. Austin climbed 61%, Phoenix 59%. Boise, Boise up 53%. At the peak, nearly 6,000 homes sold for $100,000 or more above asking price in a single month. For normal houses where someone was going to do normal things like make dinner and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Domino 3. By mid-2022, inflation was running at 9.1%, the highest in 40 years. So the Fed did what central banks do. They raised rates, historically aggressively. 11 hikes in 16 months. From 0.25% to 5.50%, the fastest tightening cycle in 4 decades. Mortgage rates followed in the worst possible direction. January 2022, 3.22%. October 2022, 7.08%. October 2023, 7.79%, the highest since 2000. At 7.79%, that $320,000 mortgage now costs $2,312 a month, versus $1,293 at the pandemic low. That's over $1,000 more per month. $363,000 more over the life of the loan for the same exact house. To buy the median-priced home at today's 6.5%, you need to earn around $106,000 a year just to qualify. The median household income is $83,700. The average American family is $22,000 per year short of qualifying for the average house. Every quarter-point rate increased prices roughly 1.4 million additional buyers out of the market entirely, not fewer buyers. Gone, priced out, watching from the sidelines. Home sales fell from 6.12 million in 2021 to just over 4 million in 2025. That's the slowest 3-year stretch the market has seen since the mid-1990s. We are selling fewer homes today, in a country with 100 million more people than 1995, than we sold in 1995. But here's the part that should break your brain. Prices didn't fall. The median price hit $475,000 in 2024, a record, and we've essentially been stuck there ever since. Now we get to the thing that is quietly holding this entire market hostage, the lock-in effect. Right now, about 51% of all outstanding U.S. mortgages carry a rate below 4%. Roughly 20% carry a rate below 3%. If you bought in 2020 or 2021 and locked in 2.75%, you are sitting on a financial instrument that no longer exists. The bank will not recreate it. The market cannot offer it. It is gone, like a limited edition sneaker that sold out and never restocked. If you sell your house and buy another one today, you're not just moving, you're voluntarily surrendering the cheapest money you will almost certainly ever access in your lifetime, and replacing it with money that costs more than twice as much. On a $400,000 mortgage, that swap costs $730 more per month. Every month, forever. That's $8,760 a year, $87,600 over a decade, just in extra interest, just for having the audacity to want to live somewhere different. Federal Reserve researchers put the average lock-in cost, the pure financial penalty of trading your old mortgage for a new one, at over $65,000, $65,000 to leave. The rational homeowner stays in the house that's too small. In the nursery, that's now a Zoom background. In the neighborhood where they stopped knowing their neighbors 3 years ago. Not because they want to stay, because a spreadsheet is physically keeping them there. The Atlanta Fed found this effect reduces the probability that any homeowner lists their home by 21 to 23%. FHFA researchers estimated it has suppressed 1.7 million transactions that would otherwise have happened. Active inventory is still 17% below 2019 levels. Months of supply hovers between 3.3 and 3.8. You need 6 for a balanced market. The market isn't broken in the sense that it's collapsing. It's broken in the sense that it has completely stopped moving. Like a door that won't open or close, just stuck, vibrating slightly, going nowhere. If you want to understand who's actually getting squeezed hardest, we need to talk about someone specific. Let's call her Maya. Maya is 31. She works in healthcare administration in a normal mid-sized city. She makes $74,000 a year, above the national median. No credit card debt. A 760 credit score. She has $31,000 saved over 3 years of genuine sacrifice. Skipped vacations, no new car, one roommate longer than she wanted. By any reasonable standard, Maya is exactly the person home ownership was designed for. She did everything right. Here's what the market offers her in return. The median home in her city is $385,000. With 10% down, her loan is $346,500. At 6.5%, her monthly principal and interest is $2,190. Add property taxes at $350, insurance at $150, maintenance reserve at $320. Total monthly cost, $3,010. Maya takes home about $4,650 a month. Housing would eat 65% of her income. She'd have $1,640 left for food, transportation, health insurance, utilities, student loans, and the occasional reminder that she is a human being with a social life. She cannot afford this house, not because she's irresponsible, because the income required to comfortably buy the median home in her market is $110,000, and she makes $74,000. The gap isn't a personal failing, it's structural. It's baked into the math. And there are millions of Mayas, financially solid people, being told by every cultural signal around them that they should own a home by now, while being quietly excluded by numbers that never appear in those signals. Here's what that actually feels like. It feels like opening Zillow for the 16th time this week and saving a house you know you can't afford, just to have somewhere to put the feeling. It feels like watching your rent go up $150 in March and realizing your down payment timeline just got 3 months longer for a deposit you've been building for 3 years. It feels like going to your best friend's housewarming, genuinely happy for them, while involuntarily calculating what their monthly payment must be. It feels like being responsible by virtually every measure, and still being systematically kept out of the thing your parents treated as a basic expectation of adulthood. The numbers tell a brutal story about who gets to own a home in America today. First-time buyers now make up just 21% of all purchases. That's a record low in 44 years of tracking. The historical norm is 40%. The median age of a first-time buyer is now 40. In the early 1990s, it was 28. Let that sink in. 12 years older. Buying at 40 instead of 30 costs roughly $150,000 in lost lifetime equity from the decade of appreciation you missed. Meanwhile, baby boomers now make up 42% of all buyers. Half of older boomers are buying entirely in cash. They sold a house they bought for $200,000 in 1998 that's now worth $700,000. Pocketed the equity. Walked in with no mortgage dependency. While the 32-year-old is trying to win a bidding war with a pre-approval letter and $31,000 saved. The downstream result? 84% of Gen Z aspiring homeowners are delaying at least one major life milestone because of housing. 29% are postponing having children. 18% are delaying marriage. 1 in 6 aspiring buyers and 22% of millennials have given up on home ownership entirely, not paused, given up. The median first-time buyer being 40 years old is not a quirky data point. It's the statistical fingerprint of a generation squeezed so hard and for so long that the defining marker of middle-class stability has been pushed from early adulthood into middle age. And every institution with a financial stake in you buying a home has a structural incentive to tell you now is a great time to buy. The real estate agent, the mortgage broker, the bank, the title company, the inspector. None of them make money when you say no. Here's what almost never gets enough airtime. The shortage didn't start in 2020. It was assembled piece by piece over 15 years of underbuilding after 2008. The U.S. is short somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 million housing units. After the financial crisis, builders pulled back hard for the entire 2000s and 10s. Housing starts averaged about 990,000 per year against a historical baseline of 1.5 million, and what got built skewed heavily toward the upper end of the market, because that's where the margins are. The starter home, under 1,400 square feet, the traditional entry point for first-time buyers went from over 400,000 units a year in the 1970s to just 65,000 in 2020. An 80% decline. The house that was supposed to be the beginning of the wealth-building ladder for working Americans was essentially discontinued as a product. Then came the pandemic surge, then the rate spike, and now tariffs. Steel up 50%, aluminum up 50%, Canadian lumber up 45%. Combined, they're adding an estimated $10,000 to $17,500 to the cost of every new home. The supply chain looked at the situation and said, "Cool problem, not our department." Builders are fighting back with incentives and rate buydowns to 4.5% or lower. But the hard truth is this: the supply problem took a decade to create. It will take at least a decade to meaningfully solve. There is no policy lever anyone can pull that builds 4 million homes in 2 years. At some point in every housing market conversation, someone says it. Is this 2008? The answer is no, not even close. And the reasons it's different matter enormously. In 2006 and 2007, subprime mortgages made up 18 to 21% of all originations. Liar loans, interest-only products, negative amortization mortgages, mainstream products. The banking system was betting on home prices rising forever, using money borrowed against itself with zero margin for error. Today, subprime lending is roughly 3.6 to 4.2% of originations. The median credit score at origination is 758, 50 points higher than 2006. Here's the most important number. In 2009, 26% of all mortgage properties were underwater. That's the condition that triggers mass defaults, forced sales, and a genuine price spiral. Today, just 2.2% are underwater. Homeowners are sitting on $35 trillion in collective equity. Foreclosures in 2024 totaled 174,100. In 2008, they hit 2.3 million. The 2008 crisis happened because banks lent money to people who couldn't repay it based on home values they largely invented. Today, the problem is almost the inverse. The lending is sound. The borrowers are qualified. The equity is real. And you still can't afford anything. This is not a fragile market. It's a frozen, structurally constrained, deeply expensive market. A crash at least creates buying opportunities. A frozen market that slowly grinds sideways mostly just continues to exist, absorbing more of people's income and waiting for time to do what policy can't. The thing everyone's waiting for is a significant drop in mortgage rates. It would genuinely help. Most forecasts have rates ending this year between 5.7 and 6.1%. Better. But a bank rate survey found that 37% of homeowners need rates below 5% before they'd even consider selling. that threshold isn't where we're headed this year. The lock-in effect fades naturally over time. People have kids, take new jobs, get divorced, retire. The share of mortgages below 4% has already dropped from its peak of 65% down to about 48% today. That slow release is the most realistic path to a more functional market, but slow is the operative word. This is a 5 to 10 year process. Now here's a twist almost nobody's talking about. A dramatic rate drop might not fix affordability. It could temporarily make it worse. Think about it. Millions of buyers are sitting on the sidelines right now. If rates drop to 5% quickly, that wave of pent-up demand floods back overnight. But supply doesn't recover overnight. The 3.5 million unit deficit took a decade to create. What happens when massive demand hits insufficient supply? Prices spike. The same dynamic that drove the 2020 to 2022 surge could partially repeat, at a higher base level. The cure, if it arrives too fast, could temporarily make the disease worse before it makes it better. The most honest forecast is the boring one. A slow multi-year correction where prices move roughly sideways while incomes gradually rise. No crash, no dramatic relief, just time and grinding adjustment, with a lot of difficult personal decisions in the middle. If you're in your late 20s or 30s right now, you are navigating the most dysfunctional housing market any generation has faced since World War II. Not the most dramatic. 2008 was more dramatic, but more insidious, because this one doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels like a permanent new normal. Your frustration is legitimate. The income required to buy the median home is $106,000. The median household income is $83,700. The system has a $22,000 gap baked in before you even show up. You are not failing at adulthood. The math is just broken. The decision to buy has to be based on your real numbers, not the market's narrative. If total monthly housing costs land below 28 to 30% of your gross income, and you plan to stay at least 7 years, buying makes sense. If the math doesn't work at that threshold, it doesn't work. Stretching to 45% of income because your real estate agent says it's a great time doesn't make it a great time. It makes you a future statistic. Renting and investing the difference is a completely legitimate strategy, one that almost nobody with a financial incentive will suggest, because nobody earns a commission when you put money in an index fund. In a high-rate, high-price environment, the math can absolutely compete with or outperform buying an overpriced house. This is not a consolation prize. If you are buying, look seriously at new construction. Builder rate buydowns at 4.5 to 5% are real, and the median new home price is essentially at parity with existing homes, something that almost never happens. Just make sure the incentives aren't disguising an inflated base price. Run every number. The housing market you're dealing with is the product of 30 months of the cheapest money in American history, followed by the fastest rate hike cycle in 40 years, layered on top of a decade of underbuilding that left the country 4 million homes short. The people who need prices to fall are priced out of buying even if they do fall. The people who need to sell are financially trapped by the very low rates that made housing affordable 5 years ago. Everyone is stuck at opposite ends of the same problem, for completely opposite reasons. The era of buying any house at any price and assuming appreciation will bail you out is over. Running the real numbers before you sign is not pessimism. It's the only sane way to navigate a market this expensive and this broken. You're not crazy for looking at listings and thinking none of this adds up. It genuinely doesn't. And understanding exactly why it doesn't is the first step toward making a decision that actually works for you, instead of just participating in collective financial insanity because everyone around you insists that buying is always the right move. Let me lock this in with a quick recap. When home prices are up 46% since 2019, mortgage rates are at 6.5%, up from 2.65% in 2021. The same house costs $730 more per month than it did 4 years ago. 2. The lock-in effect has trapped homeowners with sub-4% mortgages. 51% of all mortgages are below 4%. Selling means voluntarily paying $730 more per month forever. 3. To buy the median home, you need $106,000 income. The median household makes $83,700. Hus down, the gap is $22,000. 4. First-time buyers are now 40 years old on average. In the 1990s, they were 28, 12 years older. 5. The U.S. is short 3.5 to 4.5 million homes. A decade of underbuilding created this shortage. It will take a decade to fix. 6. This is not 2008. Subprime lending is 4% versus 20% then. Only 2% of mortgages are underwater versus 26% in 2009. The problem isn't defaults, it's that nobody can afford to buy or sell. The housing market isn't going to crash. It's not going to suddenly become affordable. It's going to slowly grind sideways for years while incomes gradually catch up. That's not what anyone wants to hear, but it's the truth. You're not failing because you can't buy. The math is failing you. And understanding that is the difference between making a decision that actually works for your life and making a decision that works for your real estate agent's commission. Run your numbers, know your threshold, rent and invest if that makes more sense. Buy if the math works, but do it with your eyes open. If this video helped you understand the market, hit that like button. It helps more people find it. And subscribe if you want more videos about how money actually works. Not the fantasy, the reality. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, are you trying to buy right now? Are you stuck in a house that's too small because your rate is too good to give up? Or have you given up on buying entirely? Be honest, be specific. Let's fill the comments with real experiences. Maybe your story will help someone else navigate this broken market. I read them. I'll be in there. Let's figure this out together. Thanks for watching. Know the math. Make your move. See you in the next one.